Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, on this Wednesday. Welcome to Ask the Theologian. I am your fellow theologian as we gather together with our brains and our Bibles, and we be theologians together on this Wednesday in May. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, and we will be happy to take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And tonight we'll do Jeroboam tonight, 10 minutes after 6 or so, Mountain Time. I've enjoyed the study of Jeroboam. How about you? It's been kind of fun. Hope you have enjoyed it too. I've got the Crimson Tide tie on today. That tie is available at Dispensational Publishing House. You can go right there to shop and then down to ties. And we add a tie every day. We just started this 3 days ago. And the tie of the day is on sale. So Crimson Tide, there you go. You can just click right there and save $2 on Crimson Tide. The ultimate accessory for the stylish and sophisticated man. If that's you, then you know. I see Myra's on there. Roll Tide Roll. Yeah, I didn't know when I named it Crimson Tide. I thought, does that match Alabama Crimson? I don't know, but for those of you from Alabama, you might definitely want to get the Crimson Tide tie. What is on your mind theologically today? Jay, I'm sorry. I'll do a Tennessee tie. I will find a volunteers tie, and we'll even try to name it in such a way. I'll take care of you. Jay, who's got 33 ties in his 35-year-old man's closet, needs a 34th tie. We'll take care of you. We will take care of you. So, I've got some questions today, but I am telling you, we're almost wide open. I'll go to old questions, so we got plenty to fill the hour. But if you've got a fresh question, you're saying, I want it in today, this is the time. If you're watching on YouTube, put the word question first. That'll help. If you're watching on Randy White Ministries or Worshipify, it'll ask you if you want to do a question. Or, of course, you could always, anytime, at the brand new Randy White Ministries website, you can go to any of these, Ask the Theologian. Here's the one that's live now. And by the way, all sorts of good stuff down there. You know, if you keep on scrolling, and even events tells about our upcoming Labor Day. But yeah, I'm gonna pick yesterday's instead of the live now, just so it doesn't play automatically. Although it might play automatically. Yeah. See, you got the chats there. You can click between the different episodes that are available right there. But what I wanted to say is right here's this Ask a Question button. If you want to do it on the Randy White Ministries website, just ask a question. There you go. You can, as we've got this morning, one that did not fill in the name or the email. That is perfectly fine. If you are maybe a prominent member of a Calvinist church and you want to ask about Calvinism with a little suspicious side, you could do it there, and your pastor would never know, just in case he happened on this program. Now, let's get into your biblical, theological, and worldview questions, and we start with one that came in through the Ask a Question box. It says, Dr. White, we believe Jesus died for the sins of the world. And indeed we do. I would stop right there and say, yes, Jesus died for the sins of the world. For example, John the Baptist introduces Jesus as, behold the Lamb of God who taketh away the sins of the world. So we do believe that he died for the sins of the world. Or we could look at 2 Corinthians 5:19, one of my favorite verses. And of course, it says, I should make that a little larger for you. There we go. It says that God was in Christ reconciling the world unto himself, not imputing their trespasses unto them, and hath committed unto us the word of reconciliation. So I agree with your premise or your assumption. We believe that Jesus died for the sins of the world. But in Ephesians 5, the question says, Paul says Christ died for the church. Can you explain what Paul means in this Ephesians 5 passage? Now, I should have looked up the exact verse there, but let's see. It would be, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Okay, Christ died for the church, gave himself for it. So, what do? Sins of the world? Reconciling the world to himself? Christ died for the church. Now, of course, you know that a Calvinist would take passages like the Ephesians 5:25 passage, Christ, gave himself for the church. They would take those passages and give them as proof texting to limited atonement. And the other passages they would explain away as meaning something else. Here's what I think. Christ did die for the church, no doubt about it. It is a logical fact, I think, that you could say that if he died for the world, he died for the church. And I think that it would be just perfectly fine to sometimes only speak of the part and other times speak of the whole. For example, I might say, let's call the questioner Bubba here. I would say, hey, Bubba, I want you to know that Christ died for you. Nobody would have a problem with that. Well, maybe a particular Calvinist would. But for the most part, nobody in evangelicalism, nobody in fundamentalism outside of Calvinism would have a problem with me saying, hey, Bubba, don't you know that Christ died for you? Nor would they take that to say Christ only died for Bubba, because logically it's not what it means. So Christ died for the church. Absolutely, Christ died for the church, and that's what's in focus here, as Paul really is talking about husbands and wives, and he gives this very specific illustration to help with the idea that, hey, husbands, I want you to die for your wife, or I want you, even as Christ loved the church, I want you to love your wife, be sacrificial for your wife. So it's a specific focus, and so it makes more sense in that case for him to be more specific. Does that eliminate the broader purpose of his death, burial, and resurrection? I don't think so. As a matter of fact, I think that most times when we speak of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, we speak of one specific aspect in which the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ had impact. But you could take another one of my favorite passages, would be like Romans 14:9. For to this end Christ both died and rose and revived, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. Now, does this mean that he didn't die for the church? He died to be Lord of the dead and living, not for the church. No, logic doesn't work that way. If you have a Venn diagram, I think it would be called, you've got the total purpose for which Christ died, and then within that circle, you would have various blobs, if you will, or other circles that say, oh, over here's this category, he died for the church. Here's this category that he died for the sins of the world. Here's this category that he died to become Lord of the dead and the living. All within the overarching category of the purpose of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Over here, Christ died for Bubba. And that's included in that overarching plan, not out there somewhere else. It's not a different thing. It is an aspect of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, let me give you an example. So Christ died for the church. Did he die for the church? Absolutely, he died for the church. Did he die only for the church? No. And again, we've got John the Baptist, the sins of the world. We've got Paul reconciling the world to himself. We've got Romans to be Lord both of the dead and the living. I believe it's Colossians. Is it 1:19? Let's check this. 1:20. Colossians chapter 1, verse 20. Having made peace through the blood of the cross by him to reconcile all things to himself. By him, I say, whether they be things in heaven or things in earth. Now, this is definitely, it says right there, by the blood of his cross. The purpose of the blood of the cross was to reconcile all things to him, things on earth and things in heaven. So we would say, let's speak to the Calvinists a moment. Did Christ just die for the elect? If so, he did not die to redeem creation. He only died for the elect. If you're going to be limited, be limited. You don't say, well, I'm only talking about here I'm limited when I'm talking about people, but he also died for creation. That's not limited atonement. So, if you're going to be limited, you have to say he did not die for all of creation. I believe the Bible says clearly he did die for all of creation. There are a lot of benefits and purposes for the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We narrow it too much. Calvinists are the worst at it, but we all tend to narrow it too much. And so here, again, Colossians chapter 1, verse 20, to reconcile all things to himself. That is to recreate the world as it's supposed to be. This is one of the purposes of the death, burial, and resurrection. So with that repurposing of the world that is given, does that include the church? It certainly does. Does that include the people of the world? I think John the Baptist, his focus was more narrow than this particular focus, all things. His focus was on the people of the world. He came to take away the sins of the world. But that didn't do anything about the curse on the ground, the thorns, taking away the sins of the world. He's talking about people sins. So you've got the lordship issue, you've got the created order issue, you've got the humanity issue that John speaks about, and I think Paul does too in 2 Corinthians 5:19. You've got the church issue. You got Bubba down here. All of that included, and we don't have to, or the biblical writer does not have to always talk about all of those. And in Ephesians 5, was it verse 25? I think he's just talking about his death for the church because that is true and was certainly part of the purpose of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Sarah G. in Illinois, not Chicago, says, I submitted a question on Saturday on the Ask the Theologian website about Acts chapter 18, verse 2. On Saturday, and a number of days last week, for some of you who may have submitted those, we had some kind of issue that they didn't go through. And so I am going to see if I can find that particular question, but we're going to talk about Acts chapter 18, verse 2, whether I find the actual question or not. And let's see here. Yeah, I don't even think that one got to my mailbox. Oh, well, let me. Oh, Sarah G. Acts 18:2. Bingo! Sarah G. I have found the question. Again, sorry that it got to my email box, but it did not filter into where it's supposed to be. So the question, Acts chapter 18:2 says that Claudius had committed all Jews to depart from Rome. Would this historically fit before or after Paul wrote Romans? Does the information fit with the understanding that Romans was written to Roman Jews? Thank you. So let's get here to Acts chapter 18, verse 2. This is in Corinth, I believe, is where Acts 18:2 says. Let's back up and see if I'm right here. Yes. So he came to Corinth in verse 1. Verse 2, found a certain Jew named Aquila, born in Pontus, lately come from Italy with his wife Priscilla, because that Claudius had commanded all Jews to depart from Rome, and came unto them. Now, it's a timing question. Does this fact that the Jews were told to depart from Rome chronologically help with the whole Roman Jew theory that I hold? I believe we're going to check this out and investigate right here and right now, Sarah G., with my crimson tie on today. We're gonna see what the chronology is, but my hunch is that this took place prior to Romans, and even that it was a short-term expulsion, and furthermore that Aquila and Priscilla later moved back to Rome. Romans 16. Yeah. I just wanted to confirm before I put out there. Romans 16:3, Paul says, greet Priscilla and Aquila, my helpers in Christ Jesus. That tells us they are there. Now, was this prior to Corinth? I think it's got to be after Corinth. So they were in Corinth. Now, by the time he writes Romans, they're after Corinth. Because of that, I think we put, and a number of other reasons, we put Corinthians as written prior to Romans. Now, let's check here our friend Dr. Bullinger in the Companion Bible, enlarged type edition, and see what our friend Dr. Bullinger has to say about the date. The epistle was written from Corinth, he says, A.D. I should have my glasses on, and I carried them across the room. 58, I think, is what it says. The 4th year of Nero. Probably during Paul's sojourn in Greece and after the departure from Ephesus in Acts 20. It was sent by Phoebe. Okay, so Bullinger would concur with me that Corinth was written first. Later he departed, wrote the book of Romans, late 50s, 58. Now, the Acts 18, Claudius commanded the Jews. Let's check that decree of Claudius if we can. According to my friend Evan. I've been asking Evan a number of things lately, theological things. And he's sometimes pretty decent on historical matters like this. Sometimes he's wildly wrong. Some people call it Chat GPT. I call him Evan. His last name is Jellicle. And the reason I've begun calling him Evan is because he gives answers that you would expect from Evan Jellicle. Not always right. Here's what Evan has to say. In Acts 18:2, it is mentioned that Roman Emperor Claudius had decreed that all Jews should leave Rome. This decree is referenced in other historical sources, such as the Roman historian Suetonius, if I got that right, and Jewish historian Josephus. The reason for the decree is not entirely clear, but it may have been due to tensions between Jews and non-Jews in Rome at the time. This forced many Jews to leave Rome, including Aquila and Priscilla, who are mentioned in Acts 2. Now, let's just go ahead and ask Evan, let's just say, what year was this decree? May or may not be accurate. Yeah, that's what I expected the answer to be, and I think correct here, because even evangelicals get dating decently correct. The exact year is uncertain, as the book of Acts does not have a specific date. However, based on historical evidence, scholars believe between 41 and 54 during the reign of Emperor Claudius. Most commonly accepted date for the decree is 4950, which would put Corinth being somewhere after that decree, obviously, and we don't know how long. So, back to the question, would this historically fit before or after Paul wrote the letter to Romans? It would be before. Does this information fit with the understanding that Romans was written to Roman Jews? Not completely. And the reason I say not completely, you could build the argument and say, well, look, they had to leave in, let's call it 50 AD. The decree went forth in 50 AD, all the Jews out of here. So if he's writing in 58, there's no Jews there. But I think this is a very temporary kind of issue. Let's ask Evan, how quickly did the Jews return? I don't know, again, if this will be accurate, but Evan says, okay, the book of Acts doesn't say. Historical evidence suggests that some Jews returned to Rome relatively soon after the decree. For example, Josephus notes that Seneca successfully intervened on the behalf of Jews and persuaded Claudius to rescind the decree. According to Josephus, the Jews were able to return as a result of Seneca's intervention. So let's just assume that that was correct. That would put the cancellation of the expulsion decree a year or two later, and the Jews go back. You say, well, why would they go back if they've already been kicked out once? Because many of these Jews had lived there for generations. They had homes still there, might have had businesses still there. They might have even left their business to be run by their Roman neighbor. They needed to get back lickety-split as soon as they could. Does it build to the argument of Roman Jews in the book of Romans? I don't really think it gives us much help there. It doesn't give a problem, just doesn't give much help. Thank you, Sarah G. I appreciate that. Now, for our next question of the day, we're going to go to Scarlett. Ontario? I'm not sure that's right. Scarlett, are you in Ontario? I don't remember. Oh, there's some good comments there. I said I was not going to jump into comments when I started a question already. So Scarlett, I'll come to the comments later. Scarlett has a question about Leviticus chapter 19, verse 28. I'll go ahead. Let's go ahead with the passage. It says, ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead, nor print any marks upon you. I am the Lord. The question, can you tell me if Leviticus 19:28 is talking about tattoos? Well, first of all, let me be really blunt. This is going to sound kind of rude, but I want to get my point across. So the question, is Leviticus 19:28 talking about tattoos? My answer is, I don't care. I don't care if it's talking about tattoos or not. Now, why? Why would I, the preacher, the theologian, give such a rude answer to I don't care if it's talking about tattoos or not? Might be talking about pierced earrings. Ears. I guess you don't pierce the earrings, you pierce the ears. Why don't I care? Because we're not under the law. And even if you buy the argument, I think this is a very weak argument, it's given all the time though. If you buy the argument that the law is divided into the moral law, the civil law, the ceremonial law, I don't buy it. I'm sure Evan would. Even if you buy that, can you say it is immoral to have a tattoo? I think you would end up with the same problem with the pierced ears, by the way. I don't have either, just in case you're wondering. Now, let's take it and try to develop, what do you do? You know, should you have a tattoo? Should you not have a tattoo? Is a tattoo morally reprehensible? Or is it okay if you were in the Navy, but it's not okay if you weren't in the Navy? What kind of position should a believer take on tattoos? The Bible does say, nor print any marks upon you. Now, does that include temporary marks? I used to have a friend all the time, who all the time, everybody's had this friend, but I had a friend, said, hey, can you give me a call? Yeah, what's your number? What's your number? 505, and he'd write it on the palm of his hand all the time. He was writing. Had to wash his hands every day to get rid of that day's notes. But he said, I won't forget it there. And he was a good God-fearing man. A little odd maybe, but a good God-fearing man. nor print any marks upon you. Does it only mean permanent marks, or is it temporary marks? And if we want to get persnickety on this, does this include makeup? Like if you take the mascara and what do the ladies do with the mascara? Is that the one? What's the one they kind of make the line go out a little bit to make their eyes look more appealing? Eyeliner. Thank you, Madison. That would have been funny if I just said, thank you, Trent. I was too late on that one. Too slow for a little humor there. But anyway, okay. So technically, isn't eyeliner a print upon you? You're putting a mark on you. Yeah, I think you probably will. But nobody has a problem with eyeliner. Eyeliner, you probably got a better argument, because isn't there the argument in the New Testament, hey, women, don't braid your hair and don't have any makeup. So you got the double whammy. So with that, Scarlett just wants to point out I don't have any tattoos. Don't want any. Thanks for answering my question. There's a number of different ways to translate this. I tell you what I would like to do here is see what the Jewish interpretation of this is. So let's make our way to the Tanakh, and we want to go to Leviticus 19, and here, I'll bring it up on the screen here. Chapter 19, we're going to show Rashi's commentary. And let's jump down here to verse 28. Let's see how they translate it and see what commentary he gives. Okay, he does, they do translate it, you shall not etch a tattoo on yourselves. That is a modern Jewish translation, by the way. It's not Rashi's Middle Ages translation. Okay, what does he say? Etch a tattoo. An inscription etched and sunken, never to be erased, for one etches it with a needle and it remains permanently black. Okay, so they are taking the Hebrew word for etch, which came across as print, as more permanent than this write on your hand and put eyeliner. And I'm going to take his word that the Hebrew word means to go deeper. This one's not going to go away. And then he goes on to say, similar to the expression found in the verses, and hang them, literally sink them, and we will hang them, we will sink them. Okay. They would thrust a pole into the ground and hang the guilty people on it. In this way, the hanged ones would appear as if inserted and thrust into the ground, and thus the word denoting etched and sunken into the skin. Okay. You shall not etch a tattoo on yourselves. Now the question, and let me check this first part. This was the practice of the Amorites to cut a person in the flesh, to make cuts in their flesh when a person related to them died. It looks to me like they are taking this together, but I would want to dig that out further. Are they taking the tattoo to be part of the marking for the dead? And was there a case in which the Amorites or some of the other neighbors, when one of their loved ones died, they made some sort of not only cut, but also filled it with ink, etched it? And don't do that. And could that be getting into the necromancy or the worship of ancestors? And that's really the issue here more than the mark on the skin. There's the possibility of that, but my guess is the grammar is not going to solve that for us. So if we take it in its most legalistic sense, I'll say, then under the Old Testament law, a person couldn't get a tattoo. Old Testament, if you're a kosher Jew, Orthodox Jew, you couldn't get a tattoo. Let's just check that a little bit here. And here at Chabad, let's say, can a Jew get a tattoo? Let's see if anything comes up. And Chabad is a very religiously orthodox group. Okay, why does Judaism forbid tattoos? So I guess that means no, you can't get one. The source of the prohibition to get a tattoo is Leviticus 19:28. This prohibition applies to all tattoos besides those for medical purposes, such as to guide a surgeon to make an incision. Although some commentaries seem to believe that this is one of Torah's chukim, I think that maybe means optional, but I'm not sure. The commandments whose rationales, the hukim are the commandments whose rationales transcend the ken of the human intellect. Other commentators do offer several explanations. Let's just see what the explanations are. The human body is God's creation and therefore unbefitting to mutilate God's handiwork. It's a decent argument. Number two, in ancient times it was customary for idol worshippers to tattoo themselves, a sign of their commitment to the deity. Okay, another decent, although social interpretation. Number three, the covenant of circumcision is unique in its being a sign in our bodies and of our relationship with God. Making other signs would weaken and cheapen this special sign. Okay, honestly, I think they've got three good arguments. I think 1 and 3 are the better of the arguments. That is God giving a prohibition to Jews in Israel from having a tattoo? If so, could be because it is saying this body is created in God's image and I don't want to undo any of that. Number two, the one piece that we're instructed to undo is the only mutilation, if we can put it that way, of the body, and I don't want to distract from that and take all the way. I think that's pretty good logical arguments. The scripture just says, don't have a tattoo. Now, for us today, tattoos or no tattoos? Let's ring the bell. I've never had a question about tattoos, I don't think. Question, should we have a tattoo today? I think I would take Romans 12 into account, which says, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. I think there is this aspect in which we are to present ourselves physically unto God. And obviously tattoos just kind of comes in that realm. And a person could probably give the argument, if they wanted to, justify it. Hey, this tattoo honors God and the physical body that I'm in. So I'm presenting it. I'm proud to present it a living sacrifice. So honestly, I would say if you're going to get a tattoo, at least get one you're proud of. You know, that if you have to cover up your tattoo, then that's not presenting your bodies a living sacrifice unto God. I've told you the story, haven't I, of the convenience store that I go in quite regularly, and they go through about 17 employees a day. And one they hired had on her knuckles some letters. And one of them started with an F and had 4 fingers. And I usually don't do anything, and I was nice to her even, you know, I'm just buying a little soda pop, as they say down in Alabama. But I did go ahead and call the management after that and say, she's a cashier. And the other word said cops, by the way. Like, that's disrespectful to the police officers who are coming in and, buying their, I'm not going to say donuts. That would be disrespectful too. Their protein drinks. Maybe you could put her in the back, somewhere where her hands aren't right there, giving the change. And I came in the next day and she had white gloves. And then it wasn't long, she had the gloves off and she had the letters turned into butterflies. She had gone back to the tattoo artist and he camouflaged the letters and put butterflies. And I just said, "Oh, those are nice butterflies. I would never choose," I didn't tell her this part, "I would never choose to put butterflies. But if what you had there, the butterflies, that is such a great improvement." I complimented her on her butterflies. I like those butterflies. Those are good-looking butterflies right there. I thought I saw a butterfly flutter by. Now, that's the case where this is not something that's going to be honorable to God. This is something that she even felt, or her employer felt. I'm not sure. I guess she felt pretty committed about it because, after all, it was an hourly convenience store job. You get another one in 12 minutes. So she felt enough about it to say, yeah, that was a bad decision. Butterflies would be a better decision. I'm going for butterflies. But that present your bodies argument goes into so much more. Our health, our physical appearance, everything else. I happen to wear a tie at this program. I didn't always wear a tie. If you go back to some of the older programs, I didn't wear a tie. I was much more casual. But I kind of think there's like this professional look to say, okay, get a white shirt and a tie. I've noticed, by the way, I have a few print shirts, even just very subtle, and like, you can't ever use them because nothing goes with it. So, white, blue, tan. 3 shirts, you're good for life. And then you can go whatever tie you want. And I thought, okay, it's a better presentation. It's a more professional presentation, or as we said over here, it's the ultimate accessory for a stylish and sophisticated man. So you want to be stylish and sophisticated? Okay, present your body as a living sacrifice. I went a long time on that. I'm not fundamentalist anti-tattoo. I think most people probably shouldn't get one, and I think a lot of it's a fad, and I think probably in the end people are not going to like some of those. But if a young man comes in, he's got a tattoo and it doesn't have dirty words and everything else on it, go for it. Let's serve the Lord. Couple of comments here. There are many reasons not to get tattoos or piercings. Number 1, they look grotesque and painful, as in self-harm. Yeah, they do, kind of. Plus, there are health concerns with both. I would suspect there are. I've never studied it, but I would suspect there are. And Jerry has a good question. You have to ask why they were forbidden in the Old Testament. That is a very good point, although that one, the problem with going down that road is then you get the same thing with pork. Why were they forbidden to eat pork? And there are some who say, okay, they were forbidden to eat pork because it's bad for you. I'm not sure that's the reason they were forbidden to eat pork. I think some of that Maybe it doesn't even have to be a Y on the law. It's just because I said so. And there it is. Another says, when one of my nieces gets stressed, she says, I need a new tattoo. Some sort of therapy for her, I guess. Tattoo therapy. I don't understand it. Neither do I desire to, but that seems odd. I think it does too. I don't know. There's probably better ways to get feeling better. Thanks, Scarlett. That question is probably one of those that some people will agree with my answer, some people will disagree with my answer. My answer is we're not under the law. Do something that is honorable and not embarrassing. And I think you'll be blessed with that. Okay. Our friend Stephen in Florida. A several-part question. Can the devil, Satan, Antichrist, demons, well, that's all slashed together, evil spirits, understand the Bible in every language ever known to man, whether they see it in writing or heard it in some audio form, preached, radio, TV, tapes, CDs, etc.? I am going to say yes. I think that the devil, Satan, Antichrist, demons, evil spirits are good linguists. And I would say they can't know it unless they've read it, heard it, but that linguistically, yes, they could take it, hear it, read it, understand it. You know, I spoke about Evan earlier. Often you'll give, I'll just show you an example. Let's just say I have this conversation going on about the expulsion under Claudius. Let's say, Evan, how do you feel about this decree? Now, before I go on, it's going to say, I'm a linguist. Linguists don't have feelings. We do words. But let's see. So how do you feel about it? He says, as an AI language model, I do not have feelings or personal opinions on historical events. However, I can provide you with information about the decree mentioned in Acts 28, and it gives some information there which may or may not be good. So I'm going to say that the devil, Satan, Antichrist, demons, evil spirits are linguists. Now, they would have feeling and emotion and purpose and agenda. By the way, AI has purpose and agenda as well, not feelings, but those things are pretty close. And so you give it to them in Spanish and Portuguese and Italian and whatever language, they can do it. Okay. Second, if a person played continual nonstop audio loop Genesis of Revelation of the King James Bible in their home or business at a moderate volume level, would the devil, Satan, Antichrist, demons, evil spirit be able to stand it, or would it drive them away? That has an underlying assumption that you did not give in the question. But we're going to question the assumptions here. I take a silence of God approach. I think that God has given us His Word, and He has limited, this is very shocking for a preacher to say, He has limited invisible spiritual activity in our age. We ought to dig into that. I've dug into it before at times, but we ought to dig into that as well and see if we can just totally attack and kill that idea. But I'm going to go with the idea. So that would then say, if I played the King James Bible in my home at a moderate level on a continuous loop, it wouldn't really affect the devil at all, because he's not there. Now, you would have some passages like, prowling about like a lion, seeking whom he may devour, which would say, oh, I think the devil is under the coffee table. Turn the King James up. We would have to deal with those scriptures to honestly lay this out, obviously. But let me set my premise aside for a moment and take the evangelical approach. I would, more broadly, I'd say just the Christian approach. Very few in Christianity would take my position. So, if they are lurking under the coffee table, would the playing of the Bible drive them out? That just seems so word of faith-ish to me. That sound waves have a spiritual impact. I think they could have an emotional impact on people and all that kind of stuff. Sticks and stones break my bones. Words, they always hurt me. But that word of faith kind of, play this Christian music or play this King James Bible, that is going to chase the devils out the door. There's a time in my life and ministry I would have said, yeah, that's true. I used to think it was kind of cool, and it still is sort of cool. Like if your church builds a new, lovely sanctuary, looks like a church, not an office building, whatever. Maybe even you buy a storefront. You say, okay, we're going to use this for a church. There was a time when they would, like in a church, when they did that, they would divide up the Bible and say, we are going to read the entire Bible right here over the next 7 days. And here it's Randy's turn, followed by Madison's turn, followed by Trent's turn. And you stand here at the pulpit or whatever, and you read the portion until the next guy comes in. And we're going to have the whole Bible. That's kind of a symbolic act, but spiritually, does that do anything? I'm going to now say no. I'm just going to say it's symbolic, maybe. And I don't have a problem with symbolism. So, can the devils comprehend audible voice? Yes. So should we play the King James Bible? No. But by the way, let me say another thing that's not on here. I would not really recommend that for anybody. You say, somebody's niece feels bad, so she wants to get a tattoo. I wouldn't say, oh, don't get a tattoo. Instead, play the audio Bible. Because I have this theory that silence is golden. And that if you always have noise going into your brain, it gets you too cluttered. That will stress you out. And you need moments, I think big moments of silence. And that's a good thing. And that we've got this conspiracy of noise around us that thinks you can't have silence. You've always got to have something playing or going on in the background. And I think that disturbs people mentally. And that maybe, and this is really stretching it here, I'll give you that, but maybe one of the reasons there's more mental illness today, at least perceivably more mental illness today, is because there's more noise today. People don't live out on the farm. And even if they do, they've got things in their ears, constantly giving something going on there. You get in the car. My wife's got this car that the sound automatically comes on. We haven't figured out. We tell it, don't come on. I don't want to listen to you. It automatically comes on. Then every now and then Madison borrows the car and switches it to a Christian station, and then I get evangelical garbage that just automatically comes on. I'd rather have the country. We need some silence. Okay, that wasn't in the purview of your question there. But theoretically, could you have? Oh no, I got to go back. Nancy says I never know how to say that word. Tinnitus. Did I get it right? Tinnitus. So severe I have to play music or something in the background constantly. And there can be sometimes when those little wiggly things in the ear are disturbed and you need to focus them in a certain direction. And music or something like that certainly can't do that. If you're a parent, by the way, I don't recommend. How did we get so far away from Stephen's question? If you're a parent, I don't recommend that you have one of those noise makers that sounds like the waves or, just white noise or whatever. I don't really recommend that because I think you ought to train your children to sleep through anything. And the noise in the background, they learn to filter that out themselves. We learn to do that, filter out noise ourselves, and focus on a particular sound that we want to hear. So, okay. I doubt it would chase the devil away. C, would this continue? I like this part. It's worth a try. Even with all I've said, it's worth a try, Stephen. Would this continual audio loop, if done in the White House or Congress, even if done subliminally, drive the evil spirits from there? Why, we would end up with empty government buildings, if that would work. Obviously, if it did work, I will donate the first dollar to the King James audio to play in the halls of Congress and in the White House. Subliminal. Imperceptibly. But I think that's taking again, I'm going to sound not very spiritual. I think that's taking a spiritualistic approach, and I want to take a physical approach. I know I gave tinnitus to my evangelical friends who didn't have it, to hear that in their ear. I think we ought to take care of the problem in the White House and the Congress by voting, by lobbying, by providing better information out there, by standing up, speaking for the truth, all the political activity that you would do in order to change politics. I think if the church broad wanted to do that, that would be a better approach. It's a less spiritual approach, indeed, but that would be a better approach. Yesterday we had the question from Sue in New Jersey about the Armageddon movie. And of course, what they were upset with is those crazed right-wingers are getting politically active. Can't have this. It's dangerous, fundamentalists. But the truth is, you take guys who did it well, whether you like the guy or not. Jerry Falwell Sr., he did it well, didn't he? Probably elected Ronald Reagan. I don't know. Maybe I should back up on that because he was running against Jimmy Carter. And it would almost seem that anybody could defeat him. But Ted Kennedy ran against him in the primary, and Ted Kennedy didn't beat him. So, but it was a miserable year. So I don't know if we could say he got them elected. But boy, what was that called? The moral majority. It made huge strides politically, and it did it more from a physical, organizational point of view. I think that's the better way to go. Thanks. On the audible and language-based look of the scripture. Oh, we got some follow-ups. I'm going to save those tomorrow. Oh, and Sarah G., I'm going to come back to that one tomorrow, too. Present your body as a living sacrifice. I thought it was a Jewish application passage. Am I wrong? Let's pick that up tomorrow. Eric, a Philippians 3 question. Rudy, a Mark chapter 13 question. So I appreciate all that. We'll get it tomorrow. Sarah's commiserating with you, Madison. She says, poor Madison. Threw you under the bus for your music. Yeah, I did. Poor Madison. She's cooking lunch today, though. There's the good news. We're having chicken salad sandwiches with no music in the background during lunch. So y'all come over. You got an hour to get here. Will it be ready at noon? Yes. Okay. Y'all come join us. We got roast beef on the evening meal supper here at the Taos Diner. That'll be good. And again, so good to see you. We've got the Crimson Tide tie, $7.99 today. You go to Dispensational Publishing, shop ties, click ties. There's our 3 ties we've had so far. We'll have a new one tomorrow. They're regular $9.99, but the day of, it's $7.99. Don't I look stylish and sophisticated? Thanks for being here with us. Each one of you always have a good time. Looking forward to Jeroboam tonight. It will be fun. Thanks for Nathan on the controls, Trent and Madison in here talking about